I think we're ready to start. We have almost 30 participants today. For those who don't know me, my name is Lina Ramirez. I am the Botanical Garden Network Coordinator for the Caribbean and Central America. Please accept my apologies if my connection is not very good, but I'll try to keep going. I wanted to share with you that today we have a very interesting presentation with two amazing speakers that are joining us from the region, from Costa Rica and from the UK. But before this, just to remind you to please switch your microphone off when they are presenting so that we don't interrupt them, to show some respect. And also, if you have any questions, please feel free to include them in the chat, to raise your hand, and we will have a Q&A session where you can ask any live questions too. Okay, so those are housekeeping rules. And as I mentioned, today we have a very interesting tech talk on how to move from prioritization to action, which is a very important subject because I feel sometimes we work a lot on that, but it's sometimes difficult to understand where our priorities will be prioritized. In this talk, we will present the results of a study we recently shared. I don't know if you got access to the Eventbrite link and our newsletters, but tomorrow we'll circulate it again. So if you want to read that study, this is the second opportunity to read it. And this is called Integral 3 Assessment to Prioritize Conservation Action in Mesoamerica. And the red list results, that's something we will discuss too today on Mesoamerican trees, and the work we are currently doing on. Okay, Lina, so you froze, but while Lina sorts this out, we can keep going. I think she was just finishing introducing speakers, and she mentioned that we'll have the opportunity to listen to each one of their presentations, but basically everyone's involved in tree conservation projects. So Emily will start sharing with us. She's the first presenter. So Emily, go ahead, please.
Okay, can everybody hear me and see my slides? I had a very quick change of room due to computer issues.
Ay, dale, se ve perfecto.
Great. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Beach, and I work for Botanic Gardens Conservation International. And I'm going to talk for a few minutes today about the global tree assessment and how we work together to assess the tree species of Mesoamerica for the IUCN Red List. So just to give a little bit of background on the global tree assessment, this has been a long-standing project that has been running since 2015 in order to update and to create IUCN Red List assessments for the world's trees. So we've had a global focus to assess all the trees of the world. So there are around 58,000 tree species in the world, and there was very little information on their conservation status before this project started. So this is a project that's coordinated by BGCI and the IUCN Species Survival Commission Global Tree Specialist Group. And this is a project that was funded by Fondation Franklinian. So the main point of this project is that this was a huge collaboration between many people all over the world. So more than 60 institutions, I think there's more like 100 now. Sorry, I haven't updated this slide. There are more than 100 institutions have contributed to this, this initiative, with over 1,000 experts now have contributed assessments. And more than 25 IUCN specialist groups have also contributed. And in the right-hand corner, you can see a picture of our Mesoamerican workshop where we kicked off the assessments for the region. So this included participants from all across the region in 2019, and we got together and started doing assessments for the trees of Mesoamerica. So here are just some of the headline numbers. This study, so I've taken the numbers from a paper that's recently published, and we can put the link in the chat later. But we focused on just the species that are found between Mexico and Panama and that are not found outside of that region. So we're talking about species that are only found within that Mesoamerican region. And for those who know that the definition of Mesoamerica can be different, we've included everything in Mexico all the way down to Panama. So in terms of threatened species, there are over 1,800 threatened species that are endemic to the region. So these are species assessed as critically endangered, and vulnerable. So that's 46% of the species that are endemic to the region. So considering DD species as well, which is data deficient species, this is around 49%. So this is quite high percentage of threatened species. So just to break it down so people can see, for species that are only found in one country, so that's endemic species, you can see that there's quite a lot of variation across the region. So just to pick out some highlights, here you have a high percentage of species that are threatened. So there are a few countries with a very elevated percentage of endemic species that are threatened. So the highest being Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, with more than 75% of their endemic tree flora threatened with extinction. In terms of species, countries where species have been assessed as data deficient at quite a high rate, we have Belize and Panama, where there are a reasonable percentage of species that are currently assessed as data deficient, and that could need some more field work or more investigation to work out what the best category for these species is. So also the results show that the distribution of species, threatened species, is not consistent across the region. So this is just a map where we've taken the level of threatened species and shown them the number of threatened species in each jurisdiction. So that is departments or states. And that shows that there are 3 places where there are particularly high levels or numbers of endemic threatened trees. So 2 of those are in Mexico and then 1 in Costa Rica. But as you can see, there are some places where there are a lot more threatened species than others. In terms of threats, in this table, you can see the top threat for endemic species for each country. So the most important threat in every country is agriculture. So the ones in red are the highest threat, and the numbers are the number of species affected. So we can see that agriculture is the major threat in every country for all of the species. But as a secondary threat, which are the ones in orange, we can see that exploitation, so logging, for example, is a major threat in most of the secondary threat in most of the countries. And then we have things like climate change and mining or fire as a secondary threat for a tertiary threat for in other countries. So we can see that the problems across the region for trees are not the same. So the data that we have collected really allows us to prioritize conservation actions that are needed, because we can see for each species what the problems are and where those species are, and then aggregate that information to come up with some conservation plans. and to do some action to make sure that none of these tree species go extinct. So in terms of conservation actions, just to give some positive information. First we'll start with something slightly less positive. There are only 18% of threatened tree species from the region that are registered in an ex situ collection. So for this, we used threatened species. We used plant search data from BGCI in order to work out how many species are in ex situ. So that is quite low. However, more than 72% of threatened species are found in a protected area. So that is some good news, although the fact that they're threatened means that there's probably still some issues that need to be addressed, even if they are in a protected area. Then just to highlight something which came out recently, there was a special issue of the magazine Ambientico, which is a Costa Rican magazine, where we took the data specific to Costa Rica and did some further analysis. So you can use the QR code if you'd like to read that. It's available in Spanish. And it includes articles about the assessments, but also conservation efforts, and it features all of our other speakers today, and give some really good case studies about things that are already ongoing to protect trees in Costa Rica. And finally, this is a very short presentation, but finally, the information gathered within the Global Tree Assessment is now available on BGCI's Global Tree Portal. So this is something that can be accessed online, and there are 3 searches that you can do on a species level, on a country level, and globally to find out more information about the tree species of the world. So I would recommend the country search, so you can see the differing levels of threat, and you can also download lists for each country to get information about the threat status for each species in the country. Great, and that was the end of my presentation. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Emily, and apologies for my connection. Okay, so now Heiner, please. Good morning, everyone. How are you? Can you hear me okay? So thank you so much for joining us. Please let me know if you can see my screen. Okay, so good morning. My name is Heiner Acevedo. I'm from Costa Rica and I work from an NGO here. We are currently developing tree conservation work, especially those threatened, especially in cloud forest areas. And today I'm going to show you an example of one of the species that we are working on at the national level, but it has some consequences too, or impact around Mesoamerica, because as this has an impact in Mexico and Panama, and this has to do with what our colleague was saying. So I'll talk briefly about the conservation strategy. This is a restoration of Costa Rica's emblematic species. In principle, this is called white pork oak. This species is cataloged as critically endangered for cloud forest of Mesoamerica. This species was primarily used in the past, especially on energy issues, but because of its good, it's been a species that has been used a lot, especially in the agricultural field. Looking at the geographical distribution, This species is found, as you can see in the map, from central and southern Mexico all the way to the west of Panama, very close to the border with Costa Rica. Those points you currently see there are data, historical and current data collection we've been using to identify where this species is located. The threats we've determined through different interviews, through field work, talking to landowners, undoubtedly deforestation has been one of the main issues. And it's important to note that this area is between 900 and 1,500 in an intermountain area. And in Costa Rica, Central America is where the main cities are located. So as cities grow, urban growth has generated for many decades deforestation and of course changes in land use. An important issue is that now we've seen low seed production, which is a common phenomenon, and we don't have enough seed harvesting every day to germinate and carrying out to the field. In 2023 and 2024, several organizations worked in Costa Rica with us, and we developed together an action plan for the conservation of these species for the next 10 years. This action plan was drafted under the guidelines established by UICN on its conservation planning. This type of tools and methods, thinking of species conservation, has been very useful. And from this process, we obtained information from all our partners located in different parts of the country. And those partners have been working in one way or the other with these species. All the knowledge and experience was reflected in 5 pillars of this plan. The first one has to do with research. We need to learn more about the species. In second place, habitat conservation, to also identify, because we've identified that some species are in both protected and wild areas. So this gives us a concrete range of where to work. And then we have population management. We've supported this plan with education and awareness, and of course, partnerships and fundraising and financing, sorry. We've worked with several organizations and we have been collaborating over the years to move forward with this plan. Many of the challenges have to do with seed shortages, due to masting, but also wildlife issues. Moving on to key results. Over the last year, we've achieved more than 1,800 seedlings germinated, and this number, I expect this number will be higher when we gather information from partner organizations, because they have been also germinating and seedling these species. We've located 71 individuals over the last 3 years. They are located at the country level, and they are and we're tracking their progress with technology. We've been working with 3 active nurseries, especially with one Castro Blanco Water National Park, but we also know that there are other organizations that have been also working on species development. Something very important is that from community support, we've and partnering with Morton Arbor, we have developed the program for tree guardians and expanded it to other species. We've organized community workshops, and in many cases, community groups and youth groups have adopted developing conservation activity and educational materials. And this is important because the community are always going to inquire and to get a little bit more of information about this species. In terms of sustainability partnerships, we're also working with the National System of Conservation Areas, which serves as institutional lens in Costa Rica. The National Water Park Juan Castro Blanco has one of the 165 protected areas, and we've established here 2 of the 3 nurseries. And through Morton, we've developed this project, the Morton Arboretum, sorry. We've developed this project with fundings from the Franklin Foundation and, of course, the Center for Species Survival. So to close, this has truly been a collective effort. And we have also been working urgently to conserve and define emblematic species for Costa Rica. So that's all from my end, and thank you, Lina. Go ahead. Thank you very much, Heiner. We have some questions in the chat, but let's wait till the end of the presentations just to make sure that everyone has enough time to present. But this is just telling us that people are genuinely interested in presentations. Now, Daniela, please go ahead. Thank you very much. My name is Daniela Quesada, and I work with the Monteverde Institute in Costa Rica. Can you see my presentation in presentation mode? So I just want to talk briefly about this article that was published in this issue in the Ambientico magazine. This was a case study on Monteverdensis conservation. First of all, where are we? We are in Costa Rica, specifically in the northeast of the country in the Teleran mountain range. Here we have cloudy forest, the cloudy forest in Torrech, and here we can see this is where the tree is located with some isolated reports throughout the country. We've worked with the northern part of the country, and I'll tell you more details later. But basically, here in the map, you can see where this tree is mainly located. These species are also known as huacatillo locally, and they are a very important source of energy at the local level. This tree is also known as Kizarra Blanca, and we noticed, or it was very interesting for us, that after this study, we started learning more about this tree after the study that was published on the three wattle velvet. They mentioned that this tree was their favorite food, and that's why we became interested in doing some research about this tree. And of course, thanks to just Dr. Jocelyn, we know that now we have some of these trees in private properties. 10% of these trees are located in private properties. So we know that one of the main issues with conservation from the community, like including or getting the community involved, was going to be one of the main solutions to conserve and protect this tree. Okay, so I'll tell you which steps we followed to work on this project and the steps that we considered really helped us having this as a successful project. First of all, teaming up and establishing partnerships, because without that, we can't do anything. The first thing we did was to look for a very interesting way to tell the story about the street. So we did some research on its natural history and hiring a local artist, Marco Molina, who helped us to illustrate these species and also to illustrate its interactions with with wildlife in the area. From this, we worked on raising awareness at schools, at the community level, and we created a capacity building program. Maybe this was a little bit more technical not only on this tree, but also in other threatened species in the area. And we hope that this project can empower or encourage the community to participate at the local level. In our case, this was specifically designed to tree conservation. Another step was to work with owners of the lands where these trees still exist. We visited them and worked on something very on something custom to them. We work with Conafifo, and they have an incentive people can get for forest conservation. We developed our own incentive for Monte Verde's conservation, and this is one of the actions we've implemented with landowners in the area. We also planted new trees. This was one of the most important goals of this project. So we have over 5,000 trees planted of these species and others, because we don't want one tree of just Monteverdensis. We want to include other species too. And also we keep researching. Cristina helped us to determine that the population in the north of the country is Monteverdensis. We reached this conclusion after doing some DNA analysis. We are also doing more research on wildlife and how they relate to this tree, especially for eating purposes, and also research on the seeds of these trees and how it moves, how the seeds move around. And to, we've concluded that we have to protect species that are carrying seeds around the cloud forest of Monteverde. We are also working on on more information on soil, on seedlings, and one way or the other, we end up talking about politics or work or building policy. So we have advocate for policy change with things such as determining areas, and my work here has been trying to generate more information on which species are more important for tree conservation. And of course, we need to be creative. We need to find ways of doing these processes interesting, fun. And back in August, we started the celebration of the month of the tree. This is the fourth edition. That's something that makes me really happy. The community really wants to get involved. And for us, it is a big effort to make sure that we include activities for every age group. The idea is to generate more interest in tree conservation. And our last step will be repeating things that worked, things we've done well, try them with with other species. We've worked with the Morton Arboretum and Heiner to design natural history, research, and we truly believe that this project has a big potential to be repeated with other species, not only in Monteverde, but outside, obviously adapting this to the needs of each community and each species. And in the screen, you can see my contact information, and that's all I have to share for now. Thank you very much, Danny. And the name of the tree is Campaña. Of the bird is Campaña. We saw a question here, so I just wanted to confirm and reply to the question in the chat. But yes, that's an endemic bird in Central America. Thank you very much, Daniela. And now, Maria Jose, please. Thank you very much, Lina. My name is Maria Jose, and I work with BGCI as a collaborator on plant conservation projects in Latin America and the Caribbean. And I also support the South and Central America network. So thank you all for being here. And I've also worked with the NGO Conservation OSA, Costa Rica. And I'll tell you a bit about the experience we have last year with a think tank. We organized this to discuss ideas for saving threatened trees of Mesoamerica through collaboration. For those who don't know, Conservación OSA is a government-based organization, and its mission is to reconnect Corcovado National Park with the vast forest cover of the Osa Peninsula. It contains one of the remnants of Mesoamerica's 5 great forests, and through research, restoration, conservation, and in situ conservation, they plan to be active with different groups to protect trees. There are other organizations in Mesoamerica carrying out plant conservation work, and for botanical gardens and arboretum, we know that there are at least 113 of them. They have a very important role in plant conservation, and they have lots of potential too. They carry out propagations and research and horticulture activities. In our region, we see that these are sites where in situ conservation takes place because there's an urgency to conserve forests. And for excellence, there are sites that maintain live collections and carry out successful conservation work. And because they interact a lot with the public, they do a lot of environmental education too. As I mentioned, well, there are many institutions, but there's not lots of communication in terms of the work they do due to lack of resources and various barriers. And there has been a disconnect and often led to duplication of efforts. So considering we have the need to create connection spaces and considering the potential and the experience conservation has, we came up with the idea of carrying out this think tank. We call this Catalyzing Actions for Tree Conservation across Mesoamerica. This was funded by Franklinia Foundation in collaboration with BGCI and Moreton Arboretum, and many of the colleagues that are joining us participated, including Daniela Heiner, Emily, and Lena. So what did we do? It was a meeting of 23 conservation and restoration leaders in Mesoamerica and other countries. We had presentations, work sessions, field trips, walks in the woods. We spent lots of time in nature and getting to know each other better and building networks. We have worked on different thematic axes of prioritization of conservation. As Emily mentioned, we have different data and we access this data to decide how we were going to work. We discussed conservation initiatives, fundraising conservation for tree conservation, not only to become aware of the opportunities available in the region, but also discuss how to access them and to ensure we use the funds. We talk about conservation through restoration, an example of large-scale work, and we also talked about conservation networks, specifically the Central America and the Caribbean Botanical Garden as an example of a very well-established network. So just to mention that even if this think tank initiative was not born from the network, it was a very important part of the network, and we are now involved with this initiative in one way or the other. During the days we were in the Conservación OSA field, we had the opportunity to analyze strengths and weaknesses and opportunities too for conservation in general. I don't have enough time to go through the details, but there were things that we noticed as an opportunity and as a weakness. For example, Guild Human Resources mentioned that this is one of their strengths, but others were saying, okay, we need more technical training for taxonomy, project management, and so on. Some institutions have seed banks and technologically advanced nurseries, while others don't. So it is clear that these opportunities to share knowledge is something to consider in the region. We finalize this event with short, medium, and long-term goals and commitments. In the short term, we agreed to compile experiences and contacts into a directory to share with group and new members. We also agreed to request funding collaboratively to support conservation projects and facilitate like exchange of knowledge. And from there, we discuss the different ideas that arose during this think tank, and then hopefully this will be more ambitious throughout the year. And the network, the Central American Caribbean Network, we agreed to continue providing and monitoring this initiative. For example, last year, we organized in Guatemala a horticulture workshop for conservation. And in September, we'll have a protocol workshop on for the propagation of threatened species, and many representatives from leader institutions will join us. So the network committed to make the work to continue to strengthen this and support the work and the impact around the region. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you very much, Mari. I see many reactions in the chat and people wanting to attend the next workshop. Okay, so I think now we can open this space for Q&A, and just to mention that this Tech Talk will be recorded and that will share the link to the English and Spanish edition in our newsletter that will be issued tomorrow. If you are not receiving this, let me know. And at the end of the presentation, I'll put a QR code on the screen. Just scan that, and then you'll be able to register to receive the newsletter. Just so that we are sure that you receive all information on the Congress, workshops, the network information. Okay, so I wanted to open this space to answer some questions. From the Vallarta Botanical Garden, they ask, Heiner, could you please explain what is the why is seed production being limited? He is talking about viable production. Okay, I see. Well, basically, this masting phenomenon happens through gender. And many things contribute to this. One of the main things is that the periodicity of acorn production doesn't happen every year. There have been periods of 2 or 3 years without production. But then we have a very high output. Or we can see synchronicity in the population, even when several trees bear fruit at the same time. And that's something that's happening right now. 2 weeks ago, I was on a site where we had 7 trees. 2 of them are highly dense. Today, I got some photos from Juan Castro. So not all the trees produce at the same time, but when production occurs, it's quite high. But there could be other years where production is low or non-existent, and sometimes seed production is very high. So that's the thing. Okay, so other is for Puerto Vallarta, do you need any follow-up questions, or was this information enough? Okay, and a comment from Orlik. Orlik, if you want to open your mic, just unmute your microphone. But they've mentioned that from the Clavijero Botanical Garden in Mexico, they are also working with clinical professionals, and they have the same issues in terms of education, and they are using the same approach for raising awareness and education. But yes, this is part of the Fairchild Challenge. They want to include their neighbors too for oak work. Yes, and taking advantage of that comment, we are working in Mesoamerica, several institutions, including IMECOL. We're working with Morton, IMECOL, the Puebla Botanical Garden, and botanical gardens in Guatemala. These are countries in which we've had more relationship to work together with the species. We had conversations in Panama too. This is a place where the species is found, but we haven't had any contact before, so they are joining us. Yes, Orlik is also thanking us and confirming that both gardens form part of the Global Conservation Consortium for Insigniam Conservation. Okay, so those are the questions we have in the chat. We have 10 more minutes, and if you have additional question, please write them in the chat or raise your hand. Just open your microphone, turn on your cameras. We want to see your faces in this meeting. Hello, I can't find the button to raise my hand. My name is Cristobal Sanchez. I'm from the Vallarta Botanical Garden. So congratulations on this information. And Daniela, I would like to ask you if you could please share a little bit more about this educational program, the one you mentioned where you were working with the youth and you were using titles such as guardians. How have you handled this? I wonder if you use some special notebooks, hats. What did you use? Of course, and if you want to join a meeting, then I can share even more information on the different strategies we used and materials too. But starting with Monteverdenesis project, we started with a title. We tried to we tried people to make it of their own. So the name we chose was something very local because we aimed for the community to adopt this name and adopt this project as part of the community. Then we spoke to the artist. He was helping us with a coloring book. For us, this was something we would share at schools, and I think that was a good strategy because sometimes students were taking books to their homes to keep drawing. And at some point, the parents were also reading the book. So I think that was a good strategy. As for one of the main activities of the tree festival or the month of the tree has been imparting workshops, again, aimed at different age groups and different audiences. For example, as part of our participation for this year in the horticulture conservation workshop, we decided to make this one of the main subjects of workshops for this month. We also carried out many activities focused on children. I don't know if you, I we did some things like painting cookies, a picnic, cookie decoration, and that's an activity everyone loved. People from different age groups participated, babies, adults. Then we shared a meal together. This year, we'll also work on cooking activities to rescue some of the plants that support us back way before we were able to go to supermarkets. We are also including older populations to share this knowledge and stories like this with us. We've been working as a community here in the institution. We have very good facilities and a big kitchen, and we are supporting other community projects here in the Institute. Here we have different anecdotes, exchanging experiences on recipes, organizing an edible species workshop. So as for this workshop, this training, this is called Forest Ambassadors. It normally lasts 3 or 4 days, and we include different approaches here. The idea is throughout these trainings, prepare people in the community, those who are very interested in these subjects, because we know that they'll become the next 3 conservation leaders in the area. This is open to every age group, but normally younger age groups are more interested in workshops like this. And we know that there are some people that join the workshop every year that have this interest in protecting the areas, and that's what we want to promote. So in terms of strategies, we've followed many of them. I won't have enough time to share all of them here, but please contact me if you want a separate meeting. I can talk about this in a broader way and also to talk about the community's response. I must admit that in my community, environmental education is something really important. In this community, people are very well connected to nature and they look forward to activities like this. The problem I have here is that I don't have enough spaces to include everyone, but I always try to be as creative as possible to include every type of audience. Thank you. Well, we just have 4 minutes left, so I just wanted to ask our speakers if you have any last thoughts before closing this tech talk, perhaps something you were not able to include during your presentation or a final point you want to highlight, the most important thing for you. So I'll open this space. Maria Jose, Emily, would you like to start? Because Heiner and Daniela have answered some questions already, and then they can close too. So to me, assessing all the species is just the first step to protect every species in the region. And considering the huge amount of information we've created throughout the assessment process, we can take this information and start prioritizing the most important actions to protect the species in the region. To me, this is just the next step. It took 10 years of work, but now we can start working on more actions like Heiner and Daniela mentioned. Thank you. I just wanted to add that I'm going to put in the chat the link to the think tank report. in case anyone works with endangered species in the region. And if you want to work with the Central American network of the botanical gardens, please contact Lina or myself. And Daniela? Okay. In my case, just to mention that this is one of the species we work on, the energy is there, and just like Monteverde Institute and the other conservation organizations in Costa Rica, we work with other species. We talked about one, too, but we have worked with 15 to 20 species that we've already found thanks to this previous process, this assessment process. So using this information, we have been able to use this information and just repeat and escalate the same process. I'll also add my email, and if you have any further questions, let me know. Okay, so 1 minute left to close this talk. So thanks to all of our presenters. And before closing this, can you confirm if you see my screen? So just to thank everyone, just to remind you that this is a tech talk for the Central American and the Caribbean Botanical Network, Botanical Gardens Network. We have an upcoming Congress. I hope Heiner, Daniela, Emily, Maria Jose can become part of this Congress. This Congress will be co-hosted by the Dr. Rafael M. Moscoso Garden. I know some participants are joining us from there. They are organizing a congress called Botanical Bridges in 2026. You can access to the workshop information via this QR code. There are some scholarships available for our network. Registration is open until September 30th. For scholarships, we still have enough time. More information here. And if you're not receiving our newsletter, please subscribe. We are sharing all of our communications, publications, reports, etc. And well, finally, so thanks once again to everyone. We will also include these projects, this information in the newsletter. And in case you have any additional questions, please let me know. So once again, thank you everyone. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for being an amazing audience, for asking us these questions and participating, and see you next time.